All right. Howdy, folks. How is everybody tonight? Good, good, good. Okay, tonight we are covering Top Bar Hive beekeeping. That's a nice little video you've been watching. Now let's get on with the real show. Okay, as I said, we're covering Top Bar Hive beekeeping. How much leash do I have? I'm pretty good. Okay. So, first about me. Alright, so I'm McCartney Taylor, for those of you who do not know me yet. My credentials is I'm Spring Creek Elementary. And I got a couple degrees in engineering. And I'm known mainly for my field meteoriticist stuff, which is the science of meteorites and meteorite recovery. That is actually how I got into beekeeping. I have been a beekeeper about 4 or 5 or 6 years now. And I was on an expedition in Africa in central Tanzania, 2005, pursuing a meteorite fall that happened in the 50s. And I got stuck in a small village, and they had this log up in a tree sideways in a big baobab tree, and I asked them what it was, presuming it was going to be a local village fetish. But they looked at me like I was the dumbest SOB on the planet and said, "You don't know?" And of course, this was in Swahili, and I was like, "No, I really don't know." It was a beehive. So this is a little bit about Tanzania. This is the snack bar over here. That's sugarcane. An interesting thing about Tanzania is the teeth. The farther you get from cities, the farther you get from wealth, the better their teeth get. There's no sugar in the diet as you get really poor. Quite interesting. There's your Chicken McNuggets over there. That's a chicken he's holding. Little baboons, you don't mess with these guys. They can tear, grown ones can tear an arm out of an arm socket. This is just a local gathering. And this is what you're dealing with in Africa. They have nice, lush areas for beekeeping. So, came across a couple of zebras, and this is a local village thatched roof hut. Because of theft, they keep their beekeeping close to their houses or in their houses. This is a baobab tree. Anybody recognize it? Let's see a show of hands. Okay, how big is it?
Probably about 40 feet circumference.
That's a hyena. Late at night around the village in the twilight, you'd see little beady eyes looking at you. Very unnerving. That's how big it is. This particular baobab tree on the backside had a cave. Okay, what does that have to do with beekeeping? Well, it's an appropriate technology for third world countries. That's what the Top Bar Hive was designed for. Now, we should all know this. The basic cycle of the beehive: spring, your bees are multiplying and brooding up. Summer, bees harvest nectar for honey. Then you have your fall and your winter as it gets into a cluster. Nothing changes between hive types. The biology is the same. It's not affected at all. The 3 castes of bees: the queen, the workers who get the job done, the drones who are mostly useless. And I wanted to put in the Occupy Washington bees, but that'd be... All right, in reality, 95% of your hive is workers, 5% is drones. When you use a Top Bar Hive, because you're not using foundation, the Top Bar Hive will let them build as much drone as they want. It also makes it easy to cut it out if you want to do mite control. Who here is familiar with mite control from our past lectures? You can raise your hand if you remember how to get rid of your mites. One way is to simply cut out drone comb, because mites tend to focus and concentrate in drone comb. Now, the life cycle of the bee still does not change because of top bar hive beekeeping. We're looking at a typical top bar hive. How's my volume in the very back? Can you hear?
I can hear you good.
All right, good. How about now? Can everybody hear me?
I can hear you.
I can hear you.
All right, I think I might just put this down. Okay, life cycle of bee is the same no matter what hive you are in. You have eggs, then grub, then sealed brood, and then it emerges. Now, this is a philosophy. Understand your place. Beekeepers need bees.
I think you need the microphone.
Okay, crowd speaks. Beekeepers need bees, but bees do not need beekeepers. Got it? All you are doing is providing a space to live. You are a landlord. You can be either a despotic landlord or a benevolent landlord. It's your choice. So this is about top bar hives. Top bar hives, you're providing them yet another place for them to live. A little bit different than a Langstroth. And for the simplicity, I'll call a Langstroth a Lang and top bar hive just a top bar. So the pros on top bar hives. Oh, we have one here. Let me pick it up. Do we have lights? I want to pass something around real quick. Where's the light switch for back here? Awesome. Okay, this is the shape of one style of top bar hive. It obviously is not a full length. It's supposed to be about 4 feet long. And I need a volunteer. You guys are now volunteered, Wayne and Stephen. I want you to pass these things around. I'm going to pass around these top bars. You will notice that some top bars have a little bit of comb on them. And look for the comb guide. It's a little piece of string.
Give half.
Just pass them out.
Half on one side, half on the other.
And this is a typical top bar itself with comb already built on it. Just pass it to the back too.
Yeah.
So the benefit of the top bar hive and why it's so useful for third world country beekeeping as well as other areas is it is cheap to build. You can build a top bar hive for about $5 to $10. And you'll wind up with a hive that does not move well, is non-standard, doesn't have much resale value, and it makes a little less honey. But it's very simple to harvest. It can be hung to keep the ants off, and it makes more wax for you than honey. And you don't need any kind of honey house extractor, all that stuff that goes with laying hives. So that's very simple in the pros and the cons. It's cheap. In Africa, in the area I was in, you're dealing with $220 per year average income. How many of you own a Langstroth hive? How many of you would spend $15,000 for your Langstroth hive? Langs don't really belong in the poor parts of the world. They're too expensive and they're very, very precise in their measurements. Every time they've tried to do a very big push for Langstroth beekeeping in Africa, you've wound up with manufacturers who don't get the dimensions right and you're losing bee space. They cross-comb the whole thing up and it's just one big brick. So, top bar hives make a lot of sense. They're what's called technologically appropriate hives for the area. Now, the photo is courtesy of Michael Bush. This is a Tanzanian top bar hive, which is where I was. Tanzanian top bar hives are square. They're not sloped in. Again, somebody wants to hold this up? Okay, notice the sides are sloped. Thank you, Vanna. So, The idea here is that bees will not build comb to the floor. And they're trying to slant the sides so that the bee's instinct to not build comb to the floor triggers. So you wind up with just comb on the top and not on the sides. Now, Tanzanians have vertical sides, and you can build it to the dimension of a Langstroth and swap in and out Langstroth frames. You have no angles to deal with, and Michael Bush likes to do that because he will swap out frames for frames. I don't do that. I use the Kenya Top Bar Hive. Now this is actually a nuke. Do we have anybody in here who does not know what a nuke is? It is not a small tactical nuclear weapon. A nuke is a beekeeping slang for a nucleus hive, which is just a nice word for a tiny starter hive. That's all it is. So this is a I call it a 5-pack. This is a 5-pack, a 5-frame or 5-bar nuke. Often Langs have a 5-frame. This is simply a small one. See how long this one is on the picture? We're dealing with a 40 to 48-inch long hive. Was there some hands up? I saw a couple. Yes, sir.
We're having a little trouble seeing on this side. I'm sorry, man.
It's all right. I've got a remote. Okay, Vanna, you can put it down.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sure. All right, so it's easy to construct. The only part that is precise are the bars themselves. They need to be a very precise 34 to 36 millimeters wide because that respects bee space. You can have people put together mud walls in Ethiopia of their hives, and it works as long as they put the bars perfectly at 34 to 36. Top bars themselves, we can kill the front line if you wish. They've seen the frame. All right. The top bar is simply a flat bar with some kind of comb guide. Now, yes, I'm an engineer. I've tried to do it without a guide. They'll build comb all right. They won't build it straight. They will cross comb, meaning one comb will cross multiple bars, which bricks up the entire top bar set. If you give them anything which kind of dangles down, for some reason bees want to build on the lowest hanging obstruction. So if you glue popsicle sticks, they'll build on the popsicle sticks first and then go up to the bar. You do need to have a comb guide of some kind. It is necessary. I kid you not. Some people use starter strips, just kind of melt a little wax. They cut foundation into thin strips of maybe a ½ an inch or an inch tall, and they'll glue it in place with wax. Some people will cut a square in half to make 2 triangles, and they will make triangle guides. Triangle guides work really well, except in my world that's cheating. You do not have power tools anywhere where I was in Africa. So all my beekeeping, I try to keep it power tool free. Kerf. What a kerf is when you take a saw and you saw into wood. When you lift your saw, there's a groove. That groove is called the kerf. Some people simply cut a kerf down their bars and pour a little wax to make kind of a guide, thinking the bees will follow the kerf because there's wax there. They kind of do, but they often don't. So it has a low success rate. Triangle guides have a high success rate. Popsicle sticks have a very good success rate. The one I like best is you just take a string, dip it in wax, put it on the bar, and it sticks. And for some reason the bees like that, and it has a pretty high success rate. It's also power tool free. Okay, so building a top bar hive, this is another image courtesy of Michael Bush. This is simply 2 pieces of wood on each side one on the right, one on the left, 2 ends, and often on the bottom I'll just put, either leave it open or I'll put number 8 hardware cloth. Very simplistic. This is some more detailed data about how to build one that I wanted to go over tonight. There are plenty of plans out there, and there are some on my website, learningbeekeeping.com, as well as there's a lot of the Williamson County Beekeeping Association videos on there. This is simply a picture of how these top bar hives are made. You start with screwing in these 2 sides onto a bottom, if you wish, and then stretching them open to finish it out. Very quick, very simple. I think that's a little out of place. So that is what some of the deeper top bar hives look like. Notice how deep that V is. When I first got into top bar hive beekeeping in Texas, I said, I'll try this. Some of the plans I downloaded were very much like this. I built a few, and I discovered that Texas is hot. And if you know your material science, when things get hot, they tend to distort, and their Young's modulus goes out the window. And what you get is you'll get comb collapse if your top bar comb is too deep. This, I think, is too deep for Texas. I had collapses that occurred with my deep ones. When I made my top bar hives wider and shallower, I had no problems, and I have not had a comb collapse since. And we have, by chance, hit high temperatures recently. So, bee space has to be respected no matter what hive you've got. In this particular hive, you make your bars 32 to 36 millimeters wide. That's 1.25 inches, 1 3/4. Ideally, you want around 36. Now, some of you might have noticed that when bees are building comb, they build comb a certain width in the brood nest. Once they get out of the brood nest, when you have a surplus of honey, which did not occur this year, when you have a surplus, they will build a fatter comb. So if you made all your comb, all your bars, the same width of 1 3/8, you will notice that they start to get fatter and fatter and get off 1 comb per bar. They'll start to spread 1 comb to 2 bars. So you have to be careful. I make some really fat 2-inch bars in the back of my hive because the bees will make 2-inch wide honeycomb if you let them. They did not get the memo to keep all their comb uniform. Now, I want to stop right here. Are there any questions so far? Yes?
Yeah, when you said comb collapse, what did you mean by that?
I meant that if you pick up, where is a top bar? Can we turn on the lights real
Like
quick?
the comb falls, I guess,
To
off
your,
the bar.
he's got it.
The wax melts.
It just, yeah, it weakens.
Okay, so comb is brilliant stuff. It can support an amazing amount of weight. It can support 20-to-1 ratio of honey to wax weight. So a little bit of wax can hold a lot of honey. That is at certain temperatures. The highest stress you're going to have if this were full of honey, the highest stress will be right here. Because if you look right here, there'll be a little bit of honey below that. It's not pulling very much. But with all this filled, it pulls a lot at the very top. So those who are going foundationless, I'll say that again. Those who are going foundationless will notice that some hot days, if your comb is too long, it'll collapse. It'll simply rip and tear off the top, right there near the top bar. So that's the big problem you have in Texas because we do have 110-degree days. And that hive tries to keep the temperatures down, but still, it does heat up. So one problem you have is comb collapse. Now that is an unmonitored, non-operator induced collapse. We happen to have operators though. We have beekeepers who will pick up their combs and they'll pick them up too quickly, or they won't cut away any burr comb where it may have attached to the side. So if you pick it up and it's still attached, it'll tear and you'll have a partial comb collapse. In which case, if it's a honeycomb, the thing to do is immediately harvest the broken comb. If it's brood comb, you'll have to repair it. And there's several ways to repair it. Who here has one of the full comb bars? Okay, when passing it around, did anybody notice an anomaly?
Like a hair clip in it?
There was a comb in a comb, which is why I like to keep that. That was from a cutout. The brood comb needed to be attached to the bar, and so I tie wrapped a hair clip in place, and then I open the hair clip and put in the brood comb, and then you walk away for 2 weeks, and the bees will have fixed it. Great engineers. So where is that one? Whoever wants to see it, raise your hand, we'll pass it your direction. Okay, that way. So there are ways to repair comb. One is to use a hair clip. If you do not have a hair clip, you will need some string and a twig, and you push the string through the comb and you start to sew the comb onto the bar. It works. The bees will reattach it, they will chew through the thread, and they will toss it out the hive when they're done. I heavily recommend that you use cotton thread or twine. Do not use nylon because it does not chew well from the bees. They make a big nasty mesh of it and it doesn't get expelled. When picking up a bar, Henry, can I use you as a bar?
Absolutely. Where you want.
Just pick up and hold this. And I want you to, all right, so stand up. And I want you to pull this out of the top bar, pretending it's full. All right, when you're picking it up, you pull it straight up. Whenever you're trying to manipulate this, you've always got to keep this plane to the, parallel with gravity. This is how you break comb. Do that again. That's how you're going to break comb off. You're all spoiled if you use Langstroth. You have a frame. It's attached on 4 sides. This is attached on 1 side, and it can't take the stress. So you have to always but never do that. You could cheat, but that's kind of dangerous. But always you keep it pointing up and down, never side to side. It's going to snap off. That is the one trick to top bar hive beekeeping. Now, one big advantage, by the way, I didn't cover this, the pros and cons. One of the biggest advantage of beekeeping, of top bar hive beekeeping, especially in Africa, is you're only opening up one small slot in the hive by pulling out 1 bar. So Langstroths, you open up the whole thing. And if they're pissed, they're going to come out boiling. But with top bar hives, you're only pulling up 1 bar at a time, and you're only going to expose 1 bar. That's it. So you can't get the whole hive coming out at you at once. And if you see they're a little bit angry, you put that bar back, close it up, and you're done before they really come out at you. Any questions about manipulation of comb? I have a video of this on YouTube that explains it better. Any questions? Yes, ma'am.
Does this hive have a top?
The bars themselves do act as a top. However, to make sure you don't have any kind of rain getting in there, you just put a sheet of plywood or some piece of wood over it, or a piece of tin, or a piece of plastic.
Is this
Texas, remember, it's hot.
Yes, but it's not touching anything inside the hive. It's just a cover over the tops of the bars. It provides shade, and it doesn't heat up inside. Henry, give him a hand of applause, would you? Okay, there's questions about wintering top bar hives in winter. I have not yet seen winter in Texas, so I couldn't tell you.
What's all that white stuff in there?
I think that's just debris. That's cotton. Michael Bush had some FAQs that I put on here. He has no problem with top bar hives. Some guys in Poland, some guys in Finland have tried it. It does work. You can put them almost anywhere. Queen excluder. You can't use a queen excluder with the top bar hive, but that doesn't matter because I don't use them for Langstroth either. Who here does use a queen excluder? Okay. Harvesting of honey is kind of fun. I might have mentioned the way you break a comb is to simply turn it sideways. This time when you harvest your honey, you have a 5-gallon bucket under you. You pick up your bar of honey and you twist. That's it. It goes plop. And then you have to do one of several methods. You can crush and strain your honey, which I'll show you one method. I use a different method, and I have a video on this method on YouTube about how to simply crush and put it through a brand new clean paint strainer, and it will drip most of it through in a matter of about 1 day. And then you'll spend 2 months getting the other 2-3% out. All right. This is kind of the bucket he uses too. That's a paint strainer. He's crushed this either by hand or using mechanical means. And he's got it to where it's going to drain to the bucket below because he's drilled holes in his. Now, I had a wonderful guide provided by the Agriculture Department in Great Britain that I donated a copy to the library. That was Third World Beekeeping. They had this really cool device that looked like a chair. They'd cut a hole in the bottom, and a paint can almost fit in it. And you simply drill holes in the bucket, and you have a little lever to crush the comb, and it goes to the bucket into another bucket below. Same principle. There's a diagram in the book on how to do that. Same crush and strain method. Now he talks about top bar hive entrances. Who here uses a top entrance? How many beekeepers do we have here tonight? Okay. All right, so some people use top entrances to their Langstroth hives. Some people default to the bottom one. There's been studies that the bottom one is more natural, because that's what you find in the wild. But either one works. The top one has the additional benefit of letting it outgas moisture during winter. Again, I have not yet seen winter in Texas. We have simply a cool fall. Heat is not a problem usually in top bar hives because of how they're designed. They dissipate heat a little better than Langstroths because they're a flat hive and they don't have the chimney effect. There's been a lot of debate. If you want to start an argument amongst top bar hive guys, say that your top bar hive doesn't create as much burr comb as the Tanzanians does. Ultimately, Mike Bush did a kind of a test, and he came to the conclusion it doesn't matter which style you use, whether it's going to be the slope-sided Kenyan or the straight-sided top bar hive Tanzanian. They both have the equal amount of burr comb on the side. Now, I'll use the word burr comb interchangeably with bridge comb and brace comb. They're all the same thing. They're an attachment to the wall. How do you feed them? Well, on this particular design, I have cut a slot that's just the right height for a Boardman feeder. Can everybody see that? Little slot, about 5 inches wide. Nod your head, make me look. Okay, there we go. All right, so I can use an external Boardman feeder, or on my large hives, I will use a small plastic bucket, like an ice bucket almost, that can handle a gallon. Because they're being fed inside the hive, it minimizes robbing and pests, and it works really well. And I like large capacity because I only check my hives maybe once every 4 weeks. He also uses a baggie feeder, which is a Ziploc bag which you've cut with a razor blade on the top, and it doesn't spill if you do it right. A frame feeder, top feeder, bathtub bottom feeder is the one I like to use, the bucket. And he has some opinions about management. You do have to manage your hive a little more carefully. Because you don't have supers you can interchange, Top Bar Hive can become honey-bound quicker. Now, we probably have some new folks here who don't know what the word honey-bound means. That is that we have a flow so strong that nectar is coming in so fast, the bees have filled every cell that they could with honey. And now there's nowhere for the queen to lay, and it may induce an early swarm. So, what you have to do is you have to pull your honey more often out of a Top Bar hive than out of a Langstroth hive. You also have to make sure that you cut off any bridge comb that you get to your honey bars. And your hive tool for a Top Bar hive is different than a Langstroth. Langstroth, J-hook hive tools and your crowbar style hive tools don't do much good with a Top Bar hive. You need a specialized piece of equipment. It's called a knife. A bread knife is ideal. I will swear by them. They're nice and long. You can slip them down the sides and cut away any bridge comb. I'm going to pause for a moment and check if there's any questions. Yes, sir.
It's actually more of a statement. If y'all want to see his videos, you got how many? 40 or 50?
74.
74. What's the name of your YouTube channel?
Out of a Blue Sky.
You'll see it. It's really good.
I've got a lot of basic stuff and more advanced stuff and some silly stuff. So I cover the gamut there. Yes, sir.
How many frames do you leave for them?
How many frames do I leave for them? That's a really good question. I debated that a lot. And with my hive design, I try to leave the equivalent of what you would for a Langstroth hive because biology hasn't changed. They need the same amount of food. For me, I don't take any honey bar in front of bar 12. So anything bar 12 and above, that's surplus. I leave them at least, including the brood nest, every bar up through 12. So that's my rule of thumb. Now, if you've built a really deep, really wide Top Bar hive, you will never get to 12. Yes, yes, miss.
What do you feed the bees?
A pastrami and Swiss cheese sandwich. I feed them the same thing you do for a Langstroth hive, which is sugar water. And I go usually with a 1-to-1 ratio, and you pour it in the back. I did borrow one thing from Skep Beekeeping. Who here knows what a Skep hive is? Raise your hand. Awesome. Who doesn't? Awesome. Okay. Skep Beekeeping are the old-style, traditional, upside-down laundry basket-looking hives. All right, they were the bomb back in 1650. They worked really well. They threw off swarms every year. But there is one video produced by a German anthropology group in Germany that has, before the last German Skep apiary went out of business, they went in and they recorded the whole thing on 16mm film. Somebody has scanned it, digitized it, and you can find it now, parts of it on YouTube. and it shows German beekeeping in like the early 70s or late 60s. And there's one interesting tidbit I saw that was worthwhile, was that when they would feed their skep apiary, they'd pick up the skep, flip it upside down, dribble a little bit of sugar water in it, and then they'd put the rest of the sugar water in a bowl, and they'd put the skep on top of the bowl. But in the bowl, they would always put grass. And that grass is there to minimize your bee drowning deaths. Who here has a problem with bees drowning this year? I mean, I don't know what they're thinking. They get drunk and fall over. I don't know. But no matter what you do, bees always wind up dead in that food bowl. So I started taking lots of straw and putting it in my feeder containers for my top bar hives and my Miller feeders for my Langstroth hives, and I cut down my bee deaths a lot. They just don't drown as much because they fall in, they thrash around a little bit screaming for a lifeguard, and they eventually find some piece of grass and crawl out. And then their buddies all come over and clean them off, and they're okay. So I kind of like that method, and I use it. Does that answer your question, little girl?
Yes.
I still recommend the pastrami and the cheddar cheese. All right. Yes, sir.
You said, passing while over, you produce more wax than honey?
Okay. You produce more wax than a Langstroth would. I used poor grammar in the construction of that sentence. I apologize. You produce more wax than you normally would in a Langstroth, and you produce less honey than you would in a Langstroth. So let's talk a little bit about production yield. Okay, so Langstroth is right now the most technologically advanced hive out there for honey production and the maximization of honey. A top bar hive, on average from the studies which have been done, produces somewhere around half that. You can argue that either way. There's several studies. But relative to a log hive in Tanzania, that Langstroth produces a heck of a lot more, and the top bar hive produces 3 times more honey than a log hive, and the Langstroth is going to produce twice as much as the top bar hive. So, if you're making $220 a year, and I can triple your honey production, that is a huge change in your income. You can now afford to send your kid to school. So top bar hives are making a big difference where they're being introduced. Yes, sir.
No, just 5.
Oh, 5? Okay, groovy. Yes, sir.
Say, your top bar hive is 14 long.
More or less.
Well, when you introduce the bees into the segment that and gradually increase their space you allow them, or you just...
No, I don't use what's called a divider board. The question is, do I use a divider board in my top bar hive? A divider board is like a fake back wall. Now, I've done a lot of cutouts, and I've yet to find a divider board in a wild hive. And as long as I don't find them in a wild hive, I'll never use one. So I just let them grow into the space on their own. Now, if we were in a very cold climate, and there's a rational reason why I use a divider board to conserve heat, I'd consider it. But I think in Texas it's pointless. Any other questions relating to that question? Raise your other hand if you do. Okay, there are several hands up. Yours was first, Don?
How do you introduce your swarm into the hive?
I've done it several ways. I took the swarm, I dumped it in the hive, and I walked away. And it worked. Now I know better. A little bit of lemongrass oil, if anybody remembers from the lecture on swarm traps. Lemongrass oil smells like the Navisov gland, which is the come here pheromone. So the bees don't want to leave because somebody is saying come here. So it improves your retention rate. Also, I want to put in, if I have a spare piece of comb, it smells like home. And if I have the luxury of also introducing a bar of brood, I will put in a bar of brood. If anybody's ever caught a swarm, who's caught a swarm? Those are a lot of fun. And they don't sting, unless you sit on them. I won't talk about that. I will not talk about that, but it still hurts. If you ever catch a swarm and they've absconded on you and you've moped around for 3 or 4 days, raise your hand. Okay, I feel your pain.
We're like 2 weeks.
Yeah, I really do. I took it personal. I mean, I caught those. But the best way to anchor a swarm and keep them from absconding is give them a frame of brood from another hive. And there's this maternal instinct that kicks in, and they just don't want to abandon brood. So everybody take it to heart. It will stop that problem. All right, I had like 5 minutes, 4 minutes ago, so I have a minute, 2 minutes left. There was another question from a young man with red hair. How many bees are in a top bar hive? It's the exact same as a Langstroth hive. You know, in summer you're getting up to 80,000 bees. And that's when it really is wonderful, because you're only opening up one gap in your hive at a time. So it's much easier to do management on a hive in summer with the top bar hive. There were 2 other hands in the back. Yes, ma'am.
When you say to check for attachments, if a red knife, how do you know if it's attached if you can't see it because the bar cover is real thick? How do you unattach it before you pull it out and break it?
One word. Fingerspitzengefühl. Okay, that's German for by the touch of one's fingers. You can almost, I swear, you can almost smell it. You start to pick up the bar and it's too resistive. And because you're a good beekeeper and you know the #1 way you're going to get stung with the top bar hive is that reach under to grab that bar and lift it, you're going to pinch a bee. That's most of the time. If you ever get stung, that's why. But you've learned. So you're using a very sensitive touch and you tug it and it doesn't feel right. And then you stop and you look and you cut. If it's still resistive and you can't see anything, you cut blind, assuming that...
How do you get in there and cut it?
Come up afterwards and look at the top bar hive. There is a gap you can clearly see when you have it open. Yes, in the very back.
You were talking earlier about two different sizes of bars, one 2-inch and one 3/8 or something along those lines. Because when they start making honey, they make their cells bigger.
Right.
Now, if you put it half and half, 2-inch on one side and 1 3/8 on the other, will they gravitate towards the 2-inch bars when they want to make larger cells for honey?
They will never cooperate with you. The question is if you put in some 2-inch bars along with some 1 3/8 inch bars, will they cooperate and build their honey bars on the wider bars? No. When it's time to build honey, they'll build honey no matter what's there. You have to be on top of the game and make sure they have plenty of space and that they have a good bar. Now, if they start making a really fat honey bar on a thin bar, you harvest it, you throw it back in the hive, and you give them some fatter ones. All right, I got like 30 seconds. Who's got a quick question? All right, that's it. Thank you very much.